pretty comfortably, in that fourth seed in the Western Conference, going up against a Rockets team that's been on fire lately. Gabe Vincent both led the way with 20 points apiece.
Okay.
And what was really impressive about Vincent's performance was his three-point shooting. He actually knocked down 6 threes in this one.
Oh, wow.
And then Dorian Finney-Smith also had a huge night. He put up a season-high 20 points, and he also hit 6 three-pointers.
Wow, what a game for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, we got to talk about LeBron James. I mean, he finished with 16 points, 8 rebounds, but it sounds like his impact went way beyond just, those basic stats, especially when the game was on the line.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, in those crucial moments, the Lakers holding on to a slim lead, James steps up to the free throw line, takes 2 free throws, puts him up 102-98 with only 11.1 seconds left on the clock. And then the very next possession, he comes up with this massive block on Alperen Sengun, who's trying to, get a layup. And then even after that, Dylan Brooks had a look at a potential game-tying three-pointer, and it just didn't go down. So, James really imposed his will on both ends of the floor when it mattered most.
Yeah, that's what he does.
Right. So on the Rockets side, Amen Thompson led them in scoring with 20 points, and Dylan Brooks chipped in with 16. But the ESPN recap mentions that, 2 of their really key offensive players, Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun, they didn't really have their usual impact on this. But what happened there? Yeah, that's a really big part of the story here. I mean, Jalen Green, typically he's a guy who you expect to get a lot of buckets for the Rockets. He was limited to only 9 points, shooting 4 for 13 from the field, and then to have 2 of your main scoring threats struggle like that against, a quality opponent like the Lakers, that's tough to overcome, and it makes you wonder, were the Lakers doing something defensively to specifically take those guys out of the game?
Yeah, that's interesting. And it sounds like even though the final score was pretty close, those individual scoring performances, or I guess you could say underperformances.
Correct. Well, it seems like their offensive game plan played a pretty big role, especially the way Doncic and James were handling the ball.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. The Lakers really seem to be running their offense through Doncic and James, drawing the attention of the Rockets defense and then kicking it out to Dorian Finney-Smith and Gabe Vincent, who were on fire from three-point range that night. And that's the three-point line for anyone who might not be, super familiar with basketball terminology.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And for those 2 guys to combine for 12 three-pointers, I mean, that's just a ton of offensive production.
Yeah.
And it really forces the defense to stretch out and cover more ground.
Yeah, you have to respect that.
Absolutely.
In those final moments you mentioned, it sounded like they were super intense besides James' free throws and that block. There was also that moment with Dorian Finney-Smith and the almost jump ball, right?
Oh, yeah. With just 20.1 seconds left on the clock, the Lakers were up 198 after Dylan Brooks missed a free throw for the Rockets.
Yeah.
And it looked like Houston might actually be able to tie up Finney-Smith and force a jump ball. And, if that had happened, the Rockets would have gotten possession with a chance to either tie the game or even take the lead in the final seconds. But the Lakers showed some really good awareness and called a timeout right before that jump ball could be called. It was just, a really smart heads-up play that helped them keep the ball and ultimately, control the game.
Yeah, that's a big moment for sure. So it was kind of a combination of star players making big plays and some,
that kind of offensive inconsistency can be a real problem against those elite teams. It makes you think, were the Lakers' defensive schemes designed to shut down those 2 guys specifically?
It's a good question. And for the Lakers,
Threes he has all season. In this particular game, that's a huge stat. When your role players can step up like that, it takes a lot of pressure off your star players and makes you a much more dangerous team overall.
Totally agree. So now let's put this game into the context of the Western Conference standings and the whole playoff picture. What are the implications of this result for both the Lakers and the Rockets moving forward?
Right. Well, if you look at the bigger picture, this win is definitely important for the Lakers because it helps them solidify their hold on that 4th seed in the West. And that could be the difference between having home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs versus starting on the road, which is always a big factor.
Oh, yeah.
And for the Rockets, even though this was only their 2nd loss in their last 14 games, it's a reminder that even the hottest teams can have an off night. Especially when you're playing a tough opponent on the road. And it also gives them some film to study, and see what they can learn from as they keep pushing for the playoffs.
And this was just the 2nd game of their regular season series, right? So they get another crack at each other later on.
Yeah, exactly. The regular season series is tied at 1 game apiece right now. And they're scheduled to play again on April 11th. And, that last game could be even more important in terms of playoff seeding and potential tiebreaker.
For sure.
And it's also worth noting where they stand in their divisions. The Lakers are in the Pacific Division, the Rockets are in the Southwest, And as of right now, the Lakers are 46-29 and the Rockets are 49-27. So both teams are clearly top contenders in the West.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about their upcoming schedules? Are there any big games coming up that we should be aware of?
Well, the recap mentions stretch of the season.
Yeah, they need it.
Yeah.
And it seems like LeBron James's workload and how much he's playing has been a bit of a talking point lately, especially as the playoffs get closer.
Yeah, that's right. The ESPN article says from Doncic, Vincent, and season high scoring night from Finney Smith. And while the Rockets showed their usual defensive toughness, their offense, especially from key guys like Green and Sengun, just really struggled to get going in this one. So this win is a big deal for the Lakers in terms of improving their playoff seeding. And for the Rockets, it's a small setback, but it could be a valuable learning experience for a really, really good team.
Yeah, I think that sums it up nicely. And hopefully this deep dive has given you a clear and hopefully insightful understanding of what happened in this game and why it's important in the grand scheme of the Western Conference.
Absolutely. I mean, we've looked at the final score. We talked about the big performances, the key moments that kind of swung the game one way or the other, and we've talked about the broader context of the standings and the playoff race, all based on what the ESPN recap told us.
Exactly. So here's a final thought for you to chew on, given that the Lakers seem to be relying a lot on their role players hitting threes and the fact that LeBron James is still carrying a pretty heavy load. How sustainable is this approach for, a really deep and successful playoff run when, the intensity and the pressure really ramp up? It's something to think about as we continue to follow these, really exciting Western Conference contenders. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Appreciate it.
See you next time.
See ya.